Hey everyone, James Niggemeyer here. Thank you for tuning back into the YouTube channel. I'd like to start a new playlist, and if you're familiar with the channel, you're probably like, James, you've got a lot of playlists. But I have a new playlist that I want to launch. It's called Throw This Today. And I'm going to go over a bait that I would recommend that a guy throw if they were faced with the conditions, the current conditions that I'm faced with. Today's conditions are cold for East Texas standards. It's not going to get out of the 30s. Yesterday it didn't get out of the 30s. I think it's a little cooler today than yesterday, and it's super bright outside, and there's a north wind, I think about 5 to 10. I think the high today is going to be 35, and it had been overcast yesterday, and it was supposed to be, I think, mostly cloudy today or partly cloudy today, and there's just no clouds. It's just bright bluebird sun, high pressure system, 2 cold nights leading up to today, and you have just, super bright, high ceiling, and really just cold temps. And if I was out on the water, what I would recommend somebody throw today would be a football jig. Now, there's a bunch of different baits that you could throw on a day like this, but one that I would definitely have tied on would be a Buckeye Lures football jig. I'm going to show you what I would have for the trailer and then also the retrieve for how I think you should fish it, and even some ideas about where to cast it, where to go on the lake. So this playlist of Throw This Today is going to kind of cover all the bases for what you would do or what I would suggest somebody do faced with the conditions and the time of year that we're in. So it's January, we're the middle of January, and we're having a pretty hard cold front. I think just 2.5 hours south of here at Sam Rayburn, there was snow coming down. So definitely some cold conditions for Texas or Northeast Texas standards. Again, that's my dog chewing on stuff. I would choose a Buckeye Lures, probably this peanut butter and jelly or like a green pumpkin. One or the other, really hard to beat. You can't beat those two colors. And for the trailer, I would go with a 5-inch Yamamoto double tail hula grub. This is something that kind of stems back to my roots out on the West Coast where I grew up fishing. I would also look for 45-degree banks. Now in rigging up this double tail hula grub, I'm going to go ahead and just put the whole thing on. The skirt on the double tail hula grub and the skirt on my jig. Not going to cut anything. I'm wanting something that's, pretty bulky. I want something that, is going to move nice and slow. I'm going to thread that on straight as I can. And this football jig has a keeper on there. Of course, I've got this thing all molded up now, and you probably can't see it, but it's got a keeper on there. And I don't mind that it's bushy. I don't even mind that the skirt's really long. When you have a longer skirt, per se, just kind of like this, the tentacles or the silicone skirt's going to kind of move real slow, and everything in the watery environment for this time of year is going to move real slow. This is kind of what I'm looking at presenting the fish. And I'll clean up this a little bit just because I put the skirt on, and so it's moved the silicone around a little bit. But that's the jig that I'm thinking of right there. I want something that I can cast around, and now that I have the jig rigged up, I'm probably going to throw this on a 7-foot to 7.3 kind of size range Phoenix rod, medium heavy, fluorocarbon, anywhere from 12 to 16 pound test. Just kind of depends on where I am in the country and the size of the fish and the cover I'm around. So where am I going to throw this football jig? I'm going to look for harder bottoms, structure that has rock or clay, some sort of harder bottom. And if I'm not fishing offshore and looking for that harder bottom, then I'm going to look for creek channel swing banks. And what I mean by that is if the main creek channel, whether it's in a creek or out on the main lake, where that creek channel is going to swing closest to the bank, there's going to be more of a steeper bank, something like a 45. And now they're not all going to be 45s, but some of them are going to be, kind of meandering out. Some are going to be steeper, some are going to be shallow, some are going to be a ledge or a bluff type bank. But what I want is some sort of drop off or some sort of steeper drop. Now, I don't want to slow tapering bank. And this is the most critical part. I'm going to throw it out there, let it sink all the way to the bottom. I might even peel line out of my bait casting reel, let it go all the way to the bottom. And then for the retrieve, I'm going to count rocks. Some of you are familiar with the Counting Rock program, but basically I'm going to be dragging this jig and I'm going to count rocks or count rubble or count whatever might be down there. I'm just going to drag that jig probably somewhere in that kind of that 9 to 10 rod tip position right there, and I'm going to just drag it. And some people will just drag it out to the side at that straight 9 o'clock, kind of like a Carolina rig, and that works fine too. But I'm going to drag it and just count whatever's down there. There's a rock, there's a pebble, there's a hard clay rise or something like that. There's feels like a piece of brush. I'm going to move it over top of that. But out on the West Coast and on those harder type banks, for your highland type impoundments, we do this thing called counting rocks, and basically what that does is gets you to slow down and really drag it on the bottom, not leaving the bottom, just keeping it on the bottom. And obviously it's going to be steeper, so moving down. And if you pull that bait on a steeper bank like this, if you pull it up off the bottom, it's going to just fall, and you don't want that. You want it to just hug the bottom, just keep tight to the bottom. And that's why we say counting rocks. Basically, you're never pulling it up off the bottom. That's my recommendation. If you were going out on the water and you had these conditions, I would suggest counting rocks with a 3/4 ounce Buckeye Lures football jig and a 5-inch Yamamoto double tail hula grub. Some of those bites aren't going to be very hard. They're going to just be real subtle tick or just pressure, and I'm going to reel down and set the hook. Hope you guys like this new playlist. It's something that I just thought of right off the cuff. I thought this will be a great way to kind of address the conditions of the day and maybe hopefully add some value to you all that are viewing this video. I certainly appreciate everybody that watches and that has subscribed. If you want to support the channel, please check out my merch, Team Niggemeyer Fishing. I'll leave a link in the description. And then also at the end of this video, I'll show you some of the items that I have. Until next time, thanks for watching and good fishing.